Real-time strategy is a subgenre of strategy video games where the game does not progress incrementally in turns. The term, real-time strategy, appeared in BYTE magazine in 1982, but usually Brett Sperry is credited with coining the term to market Dune II. In an RTS, as in other war games, the participants position and maneuver units and structures under their control to secure areas of the map and/or destroy their opponent's assets. In a typical RTS, it is possible to create additional units and structures during the course of a game. This is generally limited by a requirement to expend accumulated resources. These resources are in turn garnered by controlling special points on the map and/or possessing certain types of units and structures devoted to this purpose. More specifically, the typical game of the RTS genre features resource gathering, base building, in-game technological development and indirect control of units. The tasks a player must perform to succeed at an RTS can be very demanding, and complex user interfaces have evolved to cope with the challenge. Some features have been borrowed from desktop environments, for example, the technique of clicking and dragging to select all units under a given area. Though some game genres share conceptual and gameplay similarities with the RTS template, recognized genres are generally not subsumed as RTS games. For instance, city-building games, construction and management simulations, and games of the real-time tactics variety are generally not considered to be real-time strategy. History. Original RTS, the genre that is recognized today as real-time strategy, emerged as a result of an extended period of evolution and refinement. Games that are today sometimes perceived as ancestors of the real-time strategy genre were never marketed or designed as such at the original date of publication. As a result, designating early real-time strategy titles is problematic because such games are being held up to modern standards. The genre initially evolved separately in the United Kingdom, Japan, and North America, afterward gradually merging into a unified worldwide tradition. Danny Buntenberry's Citron Masters, developed by Ozark Softscape and released by SSA, has been considered the earliest possible game of the genre. BYTE in December 1982 published as an Apple II type in-program Cosmic Conquest, the winner of the magazine's annual game contest. The author described it as a single-player game of real-time action and strategic decision-making. The magazine described it as a real-time space strategy game. The game has elements of resource management and wargaming. Another 1982 example is Legionnaire on the Atari 8-bit family, written by Chris Crawford for Avalon Hill. This was effectively the opposite of Utopia, in that it offered a complete real-time tactical combat system with variable terrain and mutual help concepts, but lacked any resource collection and economy production concepts. As a result, this game might be better considered an early forerunner of the real-time tactics, or RTT, genre. In the United Kingdom, the genre's roots can be traced to Stonkers by John Gibson, published in 1983 by Imagine Software for the ZX Spectrum, and Nether Earth, published on ZX Spectrum in 1987. In North America, the oldest game retrospectively classified as real-time strategy by several sources is The Ancient Art of War, designed by Everywhere's Dave and Barry Murray, followed by the sequel The Ancient Art of War at Sea in 1987. Scott Sharkey of 1UP, however, considers Citron Masters and other real-time examples prior to Herzog's FI to be tactical rather than strategic, due to most lacking the ability to construct units or manage resources, and that the slower processes are modems, made for ticks so long that the games were practically turn-based. In Japan, the genre's roots can be traced to Bokosuka Wars, an early strategy RPG. The game revolves around the player leading an army across the battlefield against enemy forces in real time while recruiting, spawning soldiers along the way. for which it is considered by Ray Barnholt of OneUp.com to be an early prototype real-time strategy game. This led to several other games that combine role-playing and real-time strategy elements, such as the 1988 Cure Software Cowboy computer strategy RPGs, First Queen and Silver Ghost, which featured an early example of a point-and-click interface to control characters using a cursor. Another early title with real-time strategy elements was Sega's Gain Ground, a strategy action game that involved directing a set of troops across various enemy-filled levels. Technosoft's Herzog is regarded as a precursor to the real-time strategy genre, being the predecessor to Herzog's Spy and somewhat similar in nature, though primitive in comparison. Herzog's Spy, released for the Sega Mega Drive Genesis home console in 1989, is the earliest example of a game with a feature set that falls under the contemporary definition of modern real-time strategy. The game combined traditional strategy gameplay with fully real-time, fast-paced, arcade-style action gameplay, featuring a split-screen two-player mode where both players are in action simultaneously and there are no pauses while decisions are taken, forcing players to think quickly while on the move. In Herzog's Spy, though the player only controls one unit, the manner of control foreshadowed the point-and-click mechanic of later games. It introduced much of the genre conventions, including unit construction and resource management, with the control and destruction of bases being an important aspect of the game, as were the economic, production aspects of those bases. The game has been credited as a key influence on the creation of Dune II. Notable as well are early games like Megalomania by Sensible Software and Supremacy. Although these two lacked direct control of military units, they both offered considerable control of resource management and economic systems. In addition, Megalomania has advanced technology trees that determine offensive and defensive prowess. Another early game, Carrier Command by Real-Time Games, involved real-time responses to events in the game, requiring management of resources and control of vehicles. The early game Simant by Maxis had resource gathering, and controlling an attacking army by having them follow a lead unit. However, it was with the release of Dune II from Westwood Studios that real-time strategy became recognized as a distinct genre of video games. 1992 to 1998. Seminal titles. Although real-time strategy games have an extensive history, some titles have served to define the popular perception of the genre and expectations of real-time strategy titles more than others. In particular, the games released between 1992 and 1998 by Westwood Studios and Blizzard Entertainment. Westwood's Dune II, The Building of a Dynasty, featured all the core concepts and mechanics of modern real-time strategy games that are still used today, such as using the mouse to move units, and gathering resources, and as such served as the prototype for later real-time strategy games. According to its co-designer and lead programmer, Joe Bostic, a benefit over Herzog's Spy is that we had the advantage of a mouse and keyboard. This greatly facilitated precise player control, which enabled the player to give orders to individual units. The mouse, and the direct control it allowed, was critical in making the RTS genre possible. The success of Dune II encouraged several games which became influential in their own right. Warcraft, Orcs and Humans achieved great prominence upon its release, owing in part to its use of a fantasy setting and also to its depiction of a wide variety of buildings which approximated a full fictitious society, not just a military force. Command & Conquer, as well as Command & Conquer: Red Alert, became the most popular early RTS games. These two games contended with Warcraft II, Tides of Darkness after its release in late 1995. Total Annihilation, released by Cavedog Entertainment in 1997, introduced 3D units and terrain and focused on huge battles that emphasized macro management over micromanagement. It featured a streamlined interface that would influence many RTS games in later years. Age of Empires, released by Ensemble Studios in 1997, tried to put a game in a slower pace, combining elements of Civilization with the real-time strategy concept by introducing ages of technologies. In 1998, Blizzard released the game StarCraft, which became an international phenomenon and is still played in large professional leagues to this day. Collectively, all of these games defined the genre, providing the de facto benchmark against which new real-time strategy games are measured. Refinement and transition to 3D. The real-time strategy genre has been relatively stable since 1995. Additions to the genre's concept in newer games tend to emphasize more of the basic RTS elements, rather than innovations to the game concept. New games generally focus on refining aspects of successful predecessors. As the paragon example of gameplay refinement, Cave Dog's acclaimed Total Annihilation from 1997 distilled the core mechanics of Command and Conquer, and introduced the first 3D units and terrain in real-time strategy games. The Age of Empires idea was refined further by Stainless Steel Studios' Empire Earth in 2001. GSC Game World's Cossacks European Wars series took the genre in a different direction, bringing population caps into the tens of thousands. Dungeon Keeper, Populous, The Beginning, Jeff Wayne's The War of the Worlds, Warzone 2100 Machines, Homeworld, and Dark Reign 2 were among the first completely 3D real-time strategy titles. Homeworld was notable in that it featured a 3D environment in space, therefore allowing movement in every direction, a feature which its semi-sequel, Homeworld Cataclysm, continued to build upon, adding features such as waypoints. Homeworld 2, released in 2003, streamlined movement in the 360 degrees 3D environment. Furthermore, Machines, which was also released in 1999 and featured a nearly 100% 3D environment, attempted to combine the RTS genre with a first-person shooter genre, although it was not a particularly successful title. These games were followed by a short period of interest in experimental strategy games such as Allegiance. Jeff Wayne's The War of the Worlds was notable for being one of the few completely non-linear RTS games ever. It is only in approximately 2002 that 3D real-time strategy became the standard, with both Warcraft 3 and Ensemble Studios' Age of Mythology being built on a full 3D game engine. Kohan. Immortal Sovereigns introduced classic wargame elements, such as supply lines to the genre. Battle Realms was another full 3D game, but had limited camera views. The move from 2D to 3D has been criticized in some cases. Issues with controlling the camera and placement of objects have been cited as problems. Relatively few genres have emerged from or in competition with real-time strategy games, although real-time tactics, a superficially similar genre, emerged around 1995. In 1998, Activision attempted to combine the real-time strategy and first-person shooter genres in Battlezone, while in 2002 Rage Games Limited attempted this with the Hostile Waters games, and Natural Selection, a game modification based on the Half-Life engine. Savage. The Battle for New Earth combined the RPG and RTS elements in an online game. Specialization and evolution. A few games have experimented with diversifying map design, which continues to be largely two-dimensional even in 3D engines. Earth 2150 allowed units to tunnel underground, effectively creating a dual-layer map. 3-layer maps were introduced in Metal Fatigue. In addition, units could even be transported to entirely separate maps, with each map having its own window in the user interface. 3 Kingdoms. Fate of the Dragon offered a simpler model. The main map contains locations that expand into their own maps. In these examples, however, gameplay was essentially identical regardless of the map layer in question. Dragon's Heart emphasized its dual-layer maps by placing one of the game's two main resources in each map, making exploration and control of both maps fundamentally valuable. Some games, borrowing from the real-time tactics template, have moved toward an increased focus on tactics while downplaying traditional resource management, in which designated units collect the resources used for producing further units or buildings. Titles like Warhammer 40,000, Dawn of War, Star Wars, Empire at War, and Company of Heroes replace the traditional resource-gathering model with a strategic control point system, in which control over strategic points yields construction, reinforcement points. Ground Control was the first such game to replace individual units with squads. Others are moving away from the traditional real-time strategy game model with the addition of other genre elements. One example is Sins of a Solar Empire, released by Ironclad Games, which mixes elements of grand-scale stellar empire-building games like Master of Orion with real-time strategy elements.